In a quiet African village surrounded by tall baobab trees, there lived a young woman named Zahara. She was kind, gentle, and loved by the people of her village. She and her husband had long prayed for children, but no one could have imagined what was about to happen. One morning, the women of the village gathered at Zahara's hut when they heard her cries of labor. The old midwife, Mama Ebel, rushed inside to help. Hours passed, and people waited outside, whispering prayers. Suddenly, a shout came from inside the hut. Then another. Then another. The midwife kept calling out as more babies were born. By the time the sun was high in the sky, Zahara had given birth to not one, not two, but 15 babies. The village fell into complete silence when they heard the number. Never in their history had such a thing happened. The babies were small, but each cried with a strong voice that echoed through the village. Some villagers fell on their knees, saying it was a miracle from the ancestors. Others shook their heads in fear, whispering that no human woman could give birth to so many at once without the touch of spirits. When Zahara stepped out holding her first child, the crowd gasped. Behind her, the midwife carried the others. The chief of the village walked forward, his face filled with wonder and worry. He told the people that the gods must have a plan, for this was no ordinary event. But while others argued, Zahara held her babies close. Tired and weak, she smiled through her tears. In her heart, she felt no fear. She believed every one of her 15 children was a gift, and she silently promised she would protect and raise them, no matter what the world thought. News of Zahara's strange birth spread across the village like wildfire. Men left their farms, women left their cooking pots, and children ran through the dusty paths shouting, "Zahara has given birth to 15 babies." By evening, almost the entire village had gathered near her hut. The people stood in groups, their voices rising with fear and amazement. Some women clapped their hands together in disbelief, saying no woman can carry 15 children in her womb unless the spirits place them there. Others held their babies tightly, afraid that Zahara's children might bring bad luck. The elders of the village gathered in the chief's hut to discuss what had happened. They sat in a circle, their faces serious, the firelight flickering against the mud walls. Old Baba Kofi, the oldest man in the village, spoke first. "We must be careful. These children may be a sign from the ancestors, but they could also bring misfortune if we do not respect the gods." Some elders agreed, nodding silently, but others were afraid. One man stood and said, "What if these children are not human? What if they bring sickness or famine to our land? Should we allow them to live among us?" His words made the room fall silent. Outside, people whispered rumors. Some claimed they had seen strange lights in the sky on the night Zahara went into labor. Others said they heard voices in the wind calling her name. Fear began to spread. At last, the chief rose and lifted his staff. His voice was firm. "We shall not harm these children. The gods have given them life, and it is not for us to destroy. But we must watch them closely. We will see if they are truly human, or if they belong to the spirit world." The decision brought no peace. Some villagers felt relief, while others trembled with fear. That night, no one in the village slept soundly. The sun rose slowly over the village, painting the sky with red and gold. Zahara sat outside her hut, her 15 babies wrapped in cloth and lying beside her. Their tiny cries filled the morning air. Some villagers watched from a distance, whispering to one another. None dared come too close. Zahara felt the weight of many eyes upon her, but she kept her head high. Her body was weak from the long labor, yet her spirit burned with strength. She remembered the words she had heard the day before, some calling her children a blessing, others calling them a curse. She knew she had to make a choice. Her husband, Kwame, sat beside her, troubled and unsure. "Wife," he said softly, "the people are afraid. They wonder if these children are touched by spirits. I fear what the village might do." Zahara placed her hand firmly on his. "Kwame," she replied, "whether spirit touched or not, they are our blood. I carried them in my womb, I gave them life, and I will not let anyone call them a curse. They are mine, and I will raise every single one of them with love." Her words carried strength, but deep inside, she knew it would not be easy. Food was scarce, and 15 mouths to feed was a heavy burden. Still, Zahara refused to let fear guide her heart. That evening, when the chief and elders came to see the children again, Zahara stood proudly before them. "These are not demons nor curses," she declared. "These are my children, and I will protect them with my life. Let the village say what it wants, but I will not abandon even one." Her courage silenced the whispers for a moment. Some villagers began to wonder if perhaps the woman's bravery was itself a sign from the gods. That night, Zahara rocked her babies to sleep, whispering promises of love and protection. No matter what storm lay ahead, her decision was clear. She would never give up on them. Weeks passed, and Zahara's 15 babies began to grow. At first, they seemed like any other children, crying for milk, reaching for their mother's touch, and sleeping side by side in woven baskets. But soon, strange things began to happen in the village whenever the babies acted together. One afternoon, when all 15 cried at the same time, the ground beneath the huts shook as if struck by thunder. Pots rattled, chickens scattered, and even the strong men felt the earth tremble. The villagers rushed outside, their faces pale with fear. "These children are not ordinary," they whispered. On another day, when the babies laughed together, dark clouds gathered suddenly in the sky. Rain poured down in heavy sheets, though no season for rain had yet come. The farmers rejoiced, for their fields drank the water, but the elders looked at one another in silence, knowing such things were not natural. There were other moments too. When one baby clapped his hands, sparks like fireflies lit up the night air. When another reached for the sky, the wind grew strong and bent the tall grass. Sometimes, the youngest would stare at the stars, and people swore they saw them shine brighter. The village grew restless. Mothers kept their children away, afraid of Zahara's hut. Men muttered that the children were calling spirits into the land. But Zahara watched each moment with calm eyes. She saw not danger, but wonder. She believed her children carried gifts, not curses. Still, her husband Kwame worried deeply. "How long can we live like this?" he asked. "The people grow more afraid each day." Zahara looked at her babies and then at the horizon. "I do not know," she whispered, "but I feel they were born for a reason. The land itself listens to them. One day, we will learn why." And so, mystery surrounded the 15 children, leaving the village divided between awe and fear. One quiet night, Zahara lay awake beside her sleeping children. The moon shone through the thatched roof, and a cool wind carried whispers across the village. Suddenly, she dreamed of an old spirit, tall and cloaked in white. His voice was deep like the rumble of distant drums. "Zahara," he said, "your children are not ordinary. They carry the powers of the earth, the sky, and the waters. Their destiny lies far from this village. You must take them to the sacred mountain, where their purpose will be revealed." Zahara woke with a gasp, her body trembling. The dream felt so real that she could still hear the spirit's voice in her ears. She knew this was no ordinary vision. It was a message from the ancestors. The next morning, she told her husband Kwame. He looked troubled but did not doubt her. "If the spirits have spoken, then we must obey," he said. "But the journey is long and dangerous. The path to the sacred mountain is filled with wild beasts and dark forests." Zahara looked at her children, who stared at her with calm, shining eyes as though they understood. "We are not alone," she whispered. "The spirits walk with us." The villagers were shocked when Zahara announced her decision. Some begged her not to go, warning that the mountain was cursed. Others whispered that perhaps this was the only way to rid the village of strange happenings. The chief gave her his blessing, but warned her to be strong. With baskets tied to her back and cloth slings across her chest, Zahara carried her babies one by one. Kwame walked beside her with a spear for protection. At dawn, they set out on the narrow path, leaving behind the safety of their village. The journey had begun, one that would test her strength, her courage, and her faith in the destiny of her 15 children. After many days of walking through thick forests, crossing rivers, and climbing rocky paths, Zahara and Kwame finally reached the foot of the sacred mountain. The place was quiet, yet filled with a strange power. The air was cool, the trees stood taller than any they had ever seen, and the ground glowed faintly under the moonlight. Zahara laid her 15 children on a soft mat of leaves. Suddenly, the wind rose and circled them. The babies began to stir, their tiny hands stretching toward the sky. One cried, and the ground trembled. Another laughed, and rain began to fall gently. Each child seemed to call upon a different force of nature. Then, the same spirit Zahara had seen in her dream appeared before them. His form was tall and bright, his eyes glowing like fire. Kwame fell to his knees in fear, but Zahara held her head high, clutching her children close. The spirit spoke. "Zahara, mother of many, do not fear. Your children were sent to this world with purpose. Each of these 15 carries the strength of the earth itself. One holds the power of rain, another of fire, another of wind, and others the gifts of stars, rivers, animals, and light. Together, they are the guardians of balance. Without them, the land will one day fall into darkness." Tears filled Zahara's eyes as she listened. The spirit continued, "But know this, their journey will not be easy. They must grow, learn, and remain united. If they are divided, their power will be lost." Zahara promised with all her heart to protect them until they were ready to fulfill their destiny. The spirit placed a glowing mark on each child's forehead, a sign of their gift, before fading back into the night. Kwame held Zahara's hand, whispering, "Now I see. They are not a curse, they are the hope of our people." At that moment, Zahara's heart swelled with pride. The mystery of her children was no longer hidden. They were chosen to guard the future of the land. When Zahara and Kwame returned from the sacred mountain, the villagers rushed to see them. Some expected to find them broken and weak, others thought they might never return. But when Zahara stepped into the village, her head was high, her eyes shone with strength, and her 15 children glowed with a strange, peaceful light. The people gasped when they saw the marks glowing faintly on the children's foreheads. The chief came forward, his staff trembling in his hand. "What has happened?" he asked. Zahara told them of the spirit, the revelation, and the powers carried by each child. She explained that the children were not a curse, but a blessing, guardians chosen to protect the land. At first, the villagers were silent. Then whispers spread through the crowd, and slowly, heads began to bow in respect. Old Baba Kofi, the eldest man, stepped forward with tears in his eyes. "We doubted you, Zahara. We feared what we did not understand. But now I see these children belong not just to you, but to the whole land. They are the 15 guardians." From that day, the village changed. Instead of fear, there was honor. People brought food and helped Zahara care for her many children. Women sang songs of their destiny, and men promised to protect them. The children grew surrounded by love, and their strange powers no longer frightened the people. Zahara's bravery had transformed what once looked like a curse into a symbol of hope. She had faced doubt, whispers, and fear, Yet she never abandoned her children. Her love and courage gave them the chance to become what the spirits had destined them to be. And so, the story of Zahara and her 15 children spread beyond her village, carried by travelers to faraway lands. They became known as the 15 Guardians of the Land, a tale of courage, destiny, and the power of a mother's heart. If you are new to this channel, please make sure to subscribe and also press the bell icon so that you receive all my upcoming videos. Thank you so much for supporting me.